Usually, welcome on my first step ever. This is a platform, a place, a virtual studio, but more than that, a very, very homely home for those who know it, where we every week try to kind of, dig in or jump into or take a sneak peek of a person's life who has successfully done what they really set out to, but how did they make that success come towards them, and what does success really look like for them is something that we discuss every week. And we also come to understand from their own unique perspective that they have built, and the kind of character that they have built throughout their experiences in their career, in their professional personal life, that what really led them to take the first step and what really led them to just keep on believing in themselves, have the conviction, and also take the action. So let's begin this episode. And if you have yet not hit that follow button, follow the podcast and let's begin. So, from boardrooms to bushwalks, today's guest has done it all with the heart and strategy. Meet Jane Carey, a seasoned business strategist from CEO and now the former CEO and now the founder of Carey Advisory, where she helps business owners cut through the chaos with tailored coaching and strategic clarity. With over 25 years of leadership experience under her belt, Jane has led teams, owned and scaled businesses, guided countless organizations towards growth. Now, that is heaps of experience sitting right there. But everything has a start, everything has its own, that journey, that one decision, or maybe many of those decisions that have led people to these amazing heights in their career and personal life. In 2023, Jane and her husband took a bold leap and sold a majority share in the company and set off on a 9-month journey around Australia. That experience redefined her approach to work, life, and purpose. So, from her deep roots in rural Australia to being a Telstra Business Award finalist and a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, Jane brings a unique blend of boardroom wisdom and grounded authenticity, which we love. So, what was Jane's first step on this incredible journey? Let's find out on this episode of My First Step Ever. Jane, welcome on the virtual studios of My First Step Ever.
You, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Likewise, and I would like to kind of share with my listeners very briefly before we begin that I had this amazing chance of meeting you at a common friends event, and I loved the brief interaction that we had and the kind of the way which you carry yourself, the way you spoke, and I think your wisdom, your experiences, and more than anything else, your approach to be able to open up to people and to make them feel inclusive and to make them feel like, hey, I'm talking to you and I am all yours and I'm listening to you. That is what kind of crossed my mind when we had that brief interaction. And that's why I wanted to have you over here in this particular chat today, because our listeners are always looking out for the authentic conversations, those authentic people, to be able to see that what they can do within themselves, that even they can follow the journey. So, Jane, let's trace our steps back to your early childhood and let's begin to get to know that very little amazing, let's say 5-year-old Jane who was growing up. And we would love to know about where did you grow up and what kind of people and mindset were you surrounded with?
Okay, so I grew up in a background different to lots of people, I think. So I grew up on a farm in the lower Flinders Ranges, about 300 kilometres north of Adelaide, and lived outside of a tiny dot of a town that had a population at the time of about 280 people. So it was quite well serviced, even though it was a really small town, but a very tight-knit rural community. So I was daughter number 5 of 6 children. So my parents had 5 girls, and then my brother was number 6. And grew up on a farm. Awesome life to grow up on. We had horses, motorbikes, go-karts. We caught a school bus into the town for school. And a lot of the people that I went to school with, I knew my whole life. So we were born at the same local hospital. We went to kindy together. We went to primary school together and went to high school together. So very much of a case where you pretty much knew everybody. And sport was a really big part of that rural sort of lifetime and growing up on a farm, which was fantastic.
As much as exciting it sounds, Jane, it also sounds very different or probably alien to a lot of us. And that's what it makes it unique, I think being able to spend close to a decade or more than that with the same set of people, the community that you're growing up in,
Yeah,
the school, the friends,
yeah.
even it's a very different kind of environment. And because I think the more you spend time with people, the more trust that you build with them. Given that
Yeah,
you had that sort of very community driven and a very free flowing, I think a very natural, in the natural environment, from what I can sense, the kind of
yeah.
upbringing, what do you remember the most of yourself as a person while growing up? And what were you, as in, what did you think about yourself as a girl, young
Mm.
girl at that point in time, that
Yeah,
you would like
great,
to share?
great question. So I think it was a very safe environment. Looking back, and the people that you grew up with, you socialised, and they were the school teachers at the school, or they were the local townspeople as well. So it was a really great safe environment to grow up in. In terms of myself, I think because I had older siblings, because I was number five, I think I sort of had that crossover between being around quite a lot of adults as well when I was younger. And by the time I was about 11 or 12, my three elder sisters were getting married and leaving homes. So that sort of, I think, played a part in that as well. And also, too, just being, we were outdoorsy, being on the farm, you got exposed to hard work as well. Not that we were expected, we certainly helped out, but just seeing when it was really busy times like seeding and harvest where the farmers just worked flat out non-stop, then that just became part of it. It was just part of life. And seeing my mum, who cooked and cleaned and never complained for eight of us in the family, I think just taught me a lot about working hard probably. So, and the other thing too was it was very much an environment of service to community. So my parents were big volunteers. Most people in the community were. Everybody volunteered to help out, whether it was sport, town related, church related. You just became encompassed in this volunteering type environment as well.
Interesting. Completely off topic though. I think when we talk about community, I think probably the definition of communities have changed. I think today, there's, I could be wrong, but I feel that we create communities which are kind of need based. It's for a particular purpose that
Yeah.
most of us want to create a community. But back then it was just a way of living. That's how people
Mm.
knew to live.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but that's what I can sense. What do you have to kind of say about it? Because I think you've seen both the sides.
I have, and I think that like you'll still find that very much in regional communities. Like I'm still very connected to the town that I grew up in, and quite a few of my family are still back there, and some of my friends. So you still do see that, and maybe not to the extent that it was the prior generation, but yeah, it's you're absolutely right. It's not created for a reason. It's created for the greater good and to make sure that everything keeps rolling and everything keeps going. So yeah, as I've gone through my life journey, I've actually become to really value communities more and more, because often you have your communities while you're at school. When you've got kids at school, that's a community. You have your work community. But now a lot of communities are online. It's a different environment again.
Yes, absolutely. And going back to the offline days, as you were kind of
Hmm.
chatting
Yeah.
about your growing up days, where you were kind of growing up alongside people, that kind of instills a lot of different kind of values. I think more about the
Absolutely.
resilience and more about the quality and the innate feeling of sharing,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it kind of comes very naturally. So when you entered your teens, Jane, like about 14 or 15 years there,
Hmm.
that's a very troublesome period for a lot of us, for
Yeah.
even for our listeners who are
Yeah.
who are here. All of us have very different childhood from all across the globe, world,
Yeah.
their culture. But there are certain things which are similar, the feelings, the problems.
Yeah,
How was it
absolutely.
for you? Did you make any mistake by that point in time? If yes, how did you kind of, learn from it? If not, what was interesting for you around that time?
Yeah, I think that I'm sure I certainly made some mistakes along the way. The high school that I went to was in the town near where I grew up, which was great. But in the whole high school, there was 125 students when I went through year 12. So my year 12 class was 24 students. So it's a really micro sort of environment. But we still had issues like bullying and things like that. And so I think probably the mistakes that I made would have been around trying to be, in the cool club, and when really I wasn't. So yeah, once I worked that out and just decided to run my own race, then things got a bit easier from there. It was also starting to explore the world. Like it was still quite insular for me at that age. We didn't like I probably only still came to the city 2 or 3 times a year at that stage. So I think I was fairly sheltered. In fact, I know that I was fairly sheltered still at that age, but I think that was okay. That served me okay.
Interesting, and that was quite a brave confession over there. I think none of us are cool, but we all find ourselves.
Absolutely not cool.
So, Jane, I think while you were in that phase of your life, and when you look back, what do you think that at that point in time were your greatest strength that you think has pulled you through that phase
Mm.
with whatever ups and downs that you might have in your teenage
Yeah,
days, but those were things
yeah,
that have really helped you come out?
yeah. I was always really comfortable talking to people. I can be very chatty. So I think sort of dealing with adults as a younger person gave me that confidence. And I actually remember a teacher commenting on that when I was in about year 7, saying maybe I should consider a career in politics, because I always like to argue not necessarily argue the point, but just delve into things, why and how and why does it have to be that way. So that was definitely one thing that carried me through. And I don't know, I think I was never ever overconfident, but I just had an innate feeling that things would be okay, that things would work out. I had a great support base and support network at home. So at that stage, I probably hadn't been exposed enough to get too worried about anything, to be honest.
Interesting. So, having said that, while because you were growing up with your own siblings as well and back at home, who were you most close to, and what were the kind of fun stuff that you did while you're growing up?
Yeah, so I had a really close friendships through primary school and high school, and so we'd do a lot of like you saw people heaps. So we played sport together. We went to school together. I was really into horse riding, so did lot of horse riding with a family friend. And you were also quite close to teachers as well, and my family. I was very very close to my mum and dad, and my elder siblings as well, maybe not quite so much as I am now, funnily enough. It was like, looking back, it was quite a wide circle, which was really good. Back then, we had, like most people, had one telephone on a really long cord. You didn't actually ring people much. It was more that you saw people face to face, which I think really sort of deepens those connections.
Absolutely. I think face to face is something that has become like one of the most sought after way of meeting people, When it comes to meeting people, that's the way people propagate these days.
Yes, absolutely.
But that was a way of life, back then. Having said that, while you kind of now were taking your little first steps into your university, trying to kind of figure
Hmm.
out what you want to maybe do in your
Yeah.
uni, your undergrad, how was that time like? And did you face any confusion like most of us, and, probably took the wrong path and then had to take a U-turn? What was it like for you? Love to hear.
Yeah, so it was the big focus was on getting employment, because there wasn't, even though it was quite a buoyant community in town, it was relatively small, so there wasn't heaps of jobs. And I had always set a goal that I wanted to be an office manager. That was my dream in life, was to be an office manager or a nanny, but the office manager was the ultimate goal for me. So did year 12, but still didn't have a really clear idea of what I was going to do. my brother was in the year behind me. So I did sort of toy with the idea of going home on the farm and helping out my dad for a year. And because my brother was always going to go home on the farm, he loved farming. But I think then sort of the reality struck that I probably needed to try and get work out of high school. So it all happened in a bit of a whirlwind that over the course of a week or two that secured a spot in, back then it was called business college, and it was really like secretarial school, which sounds like such an old-fashioned word now, but in a secretarial college, which was quite a big financial outlay for my family. And at that point in time, none of my family had gone to university or gone on to any sort of further study. And in fact, we weren't necessarily encouraged to do that. My parents didn't really see that as a pathway for us. It was very much about finish school and get a job, or even get a job before you finish school and get some financial stability. They weren't big risk takers. They were very humble people. We actually grew up a pretty humble lifestyle, and we weren't poor by any means, but we when I first moved to Adelaide, I didn't have any business clothes to wear, because you had to wear business clothes to secretarial college. So my mum actually sewed me the outfits for me to wear for the first sort of 6 months or so. So, so that was really the focus, and it happened very quickly. So I went from sort of considering being home helping out my dad on the farm to within a couple of weeks moving down to Adelaide, which is a massive cultural shock. It was just, like absolutely frightening, to be honest.
I can definitely draw parallels to your, I think, the phase of your life that you're sharing with us. I think a lot of people who are listening to us today and watching us, they can draw the parallels, because for you, it was kind of shifting from your own hometown to, a city like Adelaide, a very different culture for you. As you mentioned, that was a cultural shock for you as well. And I think a lot of us who are moving cities within the country, or moving, to a different country altogether, they can definitely draw a parallel over there. So just about on, in this journey, I think it could be a very relevant kind of a topic to kind of delve into for our listeners as well, because we want to take that step. And it's very scary, even if it's like, for the very first time going to a different city in the same country, or even the same state. It's very scary. Given that, your parents really supported you in every way possible, and you were the first one to kind of go and kind of study in the business world, as to say so. What was going on in your mind at that point in time, and what really helped you, push through that big step?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I was terribly homesick, and I used to get homesick even just when I went to a friend's house, to be honest, when even right up till I was in year 12. But I was so homesick when I came to Adelaide, and that I couldn't even ring my parents, because I didn't want to cry when I spoke to them on the phone. So I used to write letters. But the one thing that made me stick at it was I just thought I'd made such a big change. I didn't want to let them down, because it was a big sacrifice to send me. And it was just the fact, I just thought I just have to do this or nothing, basically. And I just had an innate feeling that there wasn't any going backwards. And it wasn't so much about not going back to the country. That wouldn't have worried me, but it was just more, I'm set on this path now, I'm going to do it. I think also probably the speed that it happened helped as well, because it sort of just gained a momentum of its own. And to be honest, I think if I'd thought too much about it, I probably would have backed out and wouldn't have done it. So at the time, it was just all bundled up and all happening really quickly, and probably approach it differently now that I'm a bit older in terms of making some of those big, brave decisions.
Wow, the two things I want to kind of, emphasize on. Firstly, thank you so much for being so candid and relatable by just spelling the first thing that comes into all of us our mind, feeling homesick. Very, very honestly, I mean, initially it's all fun. You're a new place, so
It's all
consume with
shiny and
that.
new.
Yeah. But then after a certain point in time, you realize when you come back, you need your family, you need people that you feel you belong to, and that feeling of being loved, taken care of genuinely. That was so relatable. And then you also kind of, took us through a very, very important factor in any of our journeys, that why, when we set out to achieve something, or we set out a goal, it's not really that, it's not the physical change that you can't come back, but it's all about the mental goal that you have
Yes.
set, that if
Yeah.
you want to achieve something, it can definitely be done while going back to your place if you really feel like.
Yeah.
But to be able to do that, if you're on the journey and you've gained those skills, you've actually had those learnings, that is when I think you've sort of achieved your goal when you're on your path. And as you said that you had
Yeah.
become a bit of a different person, you were more mature, you were different,
Mm.
you could make your own decisions, and that's what the
Yeah.
changes kind of teaches you. So
Yeah. I
Jane,
think,
as you, yeah.
sorry, no, I was just going to say, I think also naivety is a good thing as well when you're young. I think, it's not a bad thing sometimes that you don't think too much about decisions as long as they're not harmful ones. I think sometimes just leaping in is all that you can do.
Absolutely true. And I think it's best, as they say, ignorance is bliss. And actually, it is a lot of times. If you knew, that what all things that one has to really go through to learn to be, on by themselves, they will be
Yeah.
really frightened and may not
Yeah.
even start out that
You'd
journey.
never do them. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So it's great that we actually know a lot of things, that you're uncertain about a lot of things. It's actually good. So people who are listening to us today, you're watching us, you just heard from, Jane, and I think it's really good thing that let some things be, unknown to you, let it unfold
Yeah,
for its own
absolutely.
beauty. And on that note, as we unfold, we go forward and unpack your journey, Jane. Now that you're here in the big city in
Hmm.
Adelaide, you're starting off this new chapter of your life. What were the challenges that you faced, besides the one that we've already discussed professionally, or with the new people that you had to adjust with, or even with the course that you were taking?
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you have any sort of doubt within yourself?
Look, I did because everything, like it was pretty much almost like I had moved from to a city overseas because I didn't know anything about the city. So even on my very first day of going to business college, I didn't know how to catch a bus. And at the time, I was staying with my uncle and aunt, and I still remember it that I stood at a bus stop, and some very kind person actually called me over from another bus stop and said, "The bus doesn't stop there. You need to come over here." And I just thought, God, I can't even get into the city. Like, how is this ever going to work? So, yeah, many, many, many times of just feeling so naive and silly.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just kept on going and kept on going. And then we moved into our own house, and I didn't know how to really cook or clean or wash or do any of those things. So, yeah, learned lots of life skills pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Um,
the reason I laughed over there, so sorry, I'll just kind of, while we are here, the reason I laughed so hard because that exactly happened to me as well. I was standing on the wrong end of the platform for taking the train, and
yeah.
there was another lady who just called out, she said, "There's no train running on that track, you have to come here."
I'm over here. I know. I still think that I would have been still standing there today if that woman hadn't said to me, "Come over here." So yeah, but then after that, got in a bit of a rhythm. I started to work out Adelaide and started to really enjoy it as well because it was fun. There was lots of things that I hadn't done before and made new friends. And I was living with a friend that I had grown up with, so that was great. So I had that familiarity. And then I found employment and got into a job and then finished my at that stage you sort of ran your business school next to your job and did that. And probably the next big challenge that came was I was working for my uncle at the time. He had quite a reasonable sized business, but I was in a junior reception role, which was totally appropriate for where I started. But after a couple of years, I just knew that I needed more of a challenge. And so I spoke to my parents about it, and they were horrified that I would look to leave that job to find something else because they said, you've got a good paying job, just stay there and, you can be there for a long time. But I just thought, but I'm getting bored. Fortunately, my uncle had a fabulous business partner who was really, really encouraging. And he said to me, if you want to, go out and spread your wings, then you should do that. So, yeah, so I moved to a different job, and that was probably where I really started to build my career.
This is such a lovely advice that I think someone has given you. But more than that, I think it's the support that everyone is looking out for, that you just spread
Mm,
your wings.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
here for you to support you. And I think you just crossed the most challenging phase of any youth's life is when you go back to your parents and tell them, "Hey, we don't want to do this job." And then they're like horrified, like, "What do you mean? You just settled yourself in career. Why do you want to leave things?" how did you process, how did you have that dialogue with your parents? How did you make them believe
Well,
in yourself?
I think I was probably lucky that we had distance between us. That probably helped. So I didn't have to, I talked to them a lot, but I didn't have to see them as often. But I just knew I needed more of a challenge. And for them, it was that fear of not having stability and not having an income.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it was about going on to the next role because, at that point, I was still thinking I'm going to be an office manager. So I was aiming for that office manager's goal. So then, yeah, my poor dad, he just about tore his hair out when I'd been in the next role for a couple of years and said to him, I'm going to leave and go to university full time. And yeah, he just about had a heart attack. So I continued to challenge the poor man.
So I think in your journey, in your career, your parents have been the standing support over there, who've been terrified and horrified, yet standing with their shaking legs
Yeah,
to kind
yeah,
of support you over there. Like, that's
correct.
amazing. So as you mentioned, then you went into a role that you were really kind of that felt challenging to you.
Hmm.
What was that role? Why did you take it up, and why did university happen?
Yeah, so it was a role in a real estate office, and it was a company that was growing really fast. I didn't know that at the time that I joined them, but at the time they were one of the biggest agencies, growing into one of the biggest real estate agencies in Adelaide. And the other thing, which was just really serendipity, is that sort of environment is a lot of people that are really pushing for success. Real estate is all about succeeding and chasing after goals and chasing after sales and lots of big personalities. It was a really fun place to work. There was always something going on. And by the time I'd sort of really settled in there, they probably had about 60 staff, which was pretty big for Adelaide at the time.
Yes.
And so I didn't realize that, but I was surrounded by a lot of pretty high performing people, a lot of big egos. So you had to learn how to deal with lots of different types of people. And it was there that I realized that if I wanted to get a lot further, I just had always had in the back of my mind to just go to uni and see if I could do it. I think that's partly what it was about, just see whether I was smart enough to even get into uni and go to uni. So I applied and got in, and my employer was fantastic. They offered me as much work as I wanted, so I could work part
Lovely.
time. Back in that stage, they had something called AB Study, or I think it was Oz Study, where you could get a small, very, very small payment from the government. And with my part-time work, I could top that up because I knew I had to be self-supporting. I couldn't go back to mum and dad and say, look, if you don't mind, just pay for me for 3 years while I'm at uni. That wasn't going to happen. So I resigned, and I actually knew I'd done the right thing the day I resigned to my manager because I was still in a sort of reception admin role. But between me, there was two or three people then to the manager of the department, and she said to me, I'm so disappointed that you're resigning because I was going to promote you to be an assistant next year. And the instant thought that came into the back of my head was, I don't want to be the assistant. I would want your job, which I never said out loud to her because I was just way too respecting of my, senior people to do that. But at that minute, I knew that I'd done the right thing by going to uni because I thought, actually, this is much more than just about progressing into the next admin role. This is going bigger than that.
Wow, Jane. Coming from the perspective of having your ultimate goal of being an office manager to now slowly climbing that ladder and the step and learning on the go and taking the decisions that felt right for you, which were purpose
Mm,
driven.
yeah.
I think often a lot of us kind of, complete our undergrad and grad just, I think, because nowadays it's sort of a norm that you have
Yeah.
to do it, but there's the purpose behind it. But I like the fact that you worked, and that's where the decision came out of from your own heart that, oh, this is where I want to proceed. And probably the next step is to kind of study, do more. And before we kind of go to the next phase, when you're out of the uni, you've graduated, and then things start rolling for you, I wanted to kind of just dive deep into one aspect of what you were mentioning of coming across really big egos, because that's something that a lot of youngsters, we who are listening, or anyone out there, we are kind of managing that throughout our own
Mm.
professional career. What did that teach you, like in a nutshell, if you can just share with us? And how did that make you stronger as a professional?
Yeah. I think probably it probably made me reflect on the sort of uh, humility that I had growing up in the environment that I was growing up, because we were very much brought up in an environment where you didn't big note yourself. You played down your achievements. If something amazing happened, you didn't really. We celebrated that as a family, but you wouldn't go out and sing that from the rafters. So it was quite, yeah, it was quite interesting. It was like very in your face to start with, but it was a good energy. So I think that was the thing that probably helped. It was actually like a really positive sort of vibe. But I've been in environments where there's been those big egos, and maybe they've not been people with the values and things that have gelled with me. So generally nowadays, I would just sit back and just let it pass. Basically, I just let it wash over me and think that that's great. And I recognize that's their personality and I've got a different personality. But at that age, I was probably still more at an age where I thought, don't say much, do as you're told, work hard, and just keep your head down. And that worked for me at the time. I think probably looking at my kids I've got a couple of children in their early 20s and a 15-year-old, I think they'd probably back up and have a go. So I think generationally things are a little bit different.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, but you answered just before I could even ask you was, how did that work for you? It just kind of being obedient over there or not kind of,
Don't ruffle the feathers. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. So as you moved along in your life and then this journey of, after your university, what was your life after university? We would love to
It's
know.
Yeah, so I did while I was at uni. So I met my husband at work, and during that time when I was at uni, we decided to start a business together. So he had a lot more business experience, heaps more business experience than I had at the time. So we set that up on the back of an idea that he had, which proved to be really successful. I had really strong admin skills and I loved systems. I loved IT and computers. So and I learned a lot then around, it was a recruitment business that we set up. Funnily enough, we actually didn't know heaps about recruitment, but we knew a lot about the sector we were in, which was property and real estate. So, and our clients didn't know a lot about recruitment. So we just sort of educated the market as we went and built that over time. So it was probably a really good time to start a business in hindsight, because I was a uni student and didn't have much money to start with. So starting a business from scratch didn't make much difference to me.
Yeah.
And then probably we started that, and it probably took about 2 years to really gain traction. And then sort of by the time we got into our third year, we were really hitting our stride. And that was around about the time I think I'd finished uni the year before. So I still stayed working for the same company right through, which was fantastic. I really appreciated that. And then we ended up taking a bit of a leap, and I worked in our business full time, as was my husband. And yeah, grew it from there.
Wow, exciting. That's a lot that has happened. I think
It was, yeah.
before you got into the ad business, before that you had your own business which you started alongside
Mhm.
with your husband and obviously a business partner, and you were still studying. Wow. I think before we move on to the current scenario and how things really moved for you to then become the Telstra Business Award finalist and be
Yeah.
able to sell part of your company and just go on that 9 month trip. I think
Yeah.
before that comes a lot of hard work and a lot of time
Yeah.
that you have spent, and I would love to kind of delve into that how part of it, or why part of it for our listeners, because I think it's the journey that is really
Yeah.
important, the ups and the downs and what you face out of it. Because there are certain moments in our life where we feel, oh my god, we're not going to go anywhere from this
Yeah.
now, it's a roadblock. Did you ever feel that sort of that you have hit that situation in the beginning days of your business that you started, or maybe once you kind of were in the
Yeah.
business?
I think probably our big first hurdle was the GFC. So that was my first real experience of uh, the external forces that can impact a business. Up until then, we were sort of building, building, building constantly. And then literally August 2008, everything just stopped. Our business just fell off a cliff. The phone stopped ringing. we had to make changes to the business that were really hard. So that was a really big reality check for me. And in a way, even though, and we've been through them since, but even in a way, it's not good for that to happen. It builds resilience and you build the capability to get through it as well. One of I think the reasons that we've been successful over the years is because we've always been very goal orientated. So we would sit down every year and agree on what obviously we could do this because we're husband and wife. What are our personal goals for the year? What are our business goals for the year? What are our financial markers? What do we want to do, around lots of things in relation to investments and kids and holidays? Write it all down, and then we would review that regularly. So that really helped us make sure that we had a plan, and the plans changed and the plans went awry, but at least we knew longer term we had the roadmap, and eventually things right themselves.
Well, I have a lot of questions now. A lot of curious questions running in my mind, but I think let me pick this one first. I think confidence in life makes a lot of difference, but
Mm-hmm.
how do we build confidence is the question. So, given that when you started off, from your humble beginnings of your
Yeah.
background where you were just wanting to be at the very beginning, an office manager, which is a great beginning, because I think those were the times when being in a professional setting was anyways considered a really, really big achievement to begin with.
Yeah.
So from that point, now kind of putting yourself into a business world, that is absolutely scary.
Mm. Yeah.
When you are in an employment world and then you start off a business, where did that confidence really stem from is my question, or maybe that was very natural.
Yeah, I don't think it was natural. I actually think it probably was driven by an innate desire not to let people down and not to fail. So, we had all our eggs in this basket, and I could have gone out and worked for someone else, and we could have done that if we needed to. But I hated the idea of letting down our clients and our employees and even my husband, and I just did not want to fail. And it was really important to me right through school and uni and things that I did really well, and with everything that I did, that I show up really, really well. So I think it was driven by that desire just to be that, it sounds a bit corny, but to be the absolute best that I could be. And so when I remember going on client visits and thinking, I feel like I'm about 15. I'm walking in here. I don't know, they're all really smart, experienced business people, but I just thought, I'm not going to look stupid. I have to do well in this meeting. So that's what would drive me.
So it's your innate desire and your own mind talking to you, kind of it's more like visualization, kind of telling yourself that
Mm,
you are good enough to do this. You're telling your
yeah,
mind, kind of psyching yourself. I say that sometimes I say it to myself when I have to go on stage and speak, or I have to
yeah,
do some sort of a work, or I have to assume a role which I've never done before. I psych myself and saying this,
yeah, yeah,
I can do, like I have control, like I know what to
yeah.
get through that. So that's very interesting, the way that you moved ahead in your career. And then we landed up in a place where you started working for an advertising company, and then what happened from there?
And no, didn't work for an advertising company. So I continued to work for our own business. We
Oh,
both
sorry, I think
did.
I got that wrong.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So we did that right through, and then like everybody, our business was impacted during COVID, and that was a really scary time, and most people were the same. And then coming out of COVID, business, we had our 3 best years ever. It just rocketed. It absolutely went through the roof. So which was great. But around that time, I did start thinking that for personal and professional reasons, it was time to make a change. And we'd had the business for 23 years by that stage, and I really felt that I I had taken it as far as I wanted to take it, and made a decision that we would take the business to market. We actually did an off-market sale, but that we would sell the business or try to sell it. We didn't even know if we could sell it. So, yeah, it was a big, big decision to go through that process.
Yeah, for sure, Jane. I think there were some really bold decisions out there that both of you kind of took. And before you make a decision, there's a thought and idea that needs to, take birth in your head. Even that's
Mm,
bold to even, accept your ideas and say, yes, let's go and execute.
yeah,
But you mentioned something very interesting that during COVID and after that, things really skyrocketed for your business. We love to hear such things in the news as well. We love to hear that.
yeah,
But what we really kind of on this platform we want to do is kind of go back into those decision making situations that has
yeah,
actually made those skyrocketing difference, because I think that's what helps our listeners understand that these results don't stem out from nowhere. These are
yeah,
actually done and made by people like us, people who believe so much in what they do, and they believe in their own decisions, they have
yeah.
conviction. So if you can take us through what really made that difference.
I think it was a culmination of things, but we worked really hard at the start of COVID to keep all of our team on board and together. So we made some big financial decisions around that, and then JobKeeper came in, and that was a big help as well. I think the decision we made early on with our business to keep it very niche was really, really important, and we didn't realize at the time how important that was. But in the recruitment sector, you either need to be really narrow in a niche or you need to be really big, because the middle ground is a really, really competitive space. So a decision made many years ago ended up helping us with that. And then there was just such a shortage of staff post COVID. It was so hard to find people that we were in a sector where we were servicing the needs of clients looking for staff, and the property sector was just flat out. So it was a bit of serendipity and a bit of judgment as well.
Yeah, but I think I believe if you're on the path of your own purpose, or let's not call it purpose, because for a lot of us we are still on that path. We don't know where we are going, but
Yeah,
if you're at least on the path where somewhere in your heart and your mind, you know that you're aligned with something and you're not constantly struggling in your head, trying to fit into a particular path.
yeah,
That's when you're on the path that you're aligned to. Things start falling into
yeah, they
place.
do.
That's when you know.
It
Yeah,
comes towards you. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And I think early on I had a fabulous mentor, because I actually never thought I would have the skills to run our business. And she was great. And she very early on she said, "Well, if you don't think of yourself as a CEO, you'll never be a CEO." And it was just the right place, the right time to hear that message. So I changed my mindset, and then yeah, the planets start aligning, and you start to gain that confidence, and that builds over time.
This is incredible, Jane. We have been with you in the past couple of few months, so few minutes now,
Yeah.
over close to an hour, listening to you, glued to you. I've really enjoyed your journey from
Mhm.
your humble beginnings, from that amazing Jane, little Jane, to growing into a woman of her own. The substance, the kind of thought process that you bring, your determination, your
Mhm.
focus, and your ability to challenge yourself and
Yeah.
people around. I think it's only your belief in yourself that has pulled you throughout these many years. And very important thing that it's not that I don't know about it, but I think when you hear a real story like yours, that you believe more in, if you're on the right path, if you're on the path that aligns somewhere with you, things will start working out for you.
Absolutely, they will.
And yeah, and I'm so glad that we have you over here. And before we kind of take your leave and wrap up this amazing chat that we have, I would like to kind of end on this note where we would love to understand that how did we come about you being the Telstra Business Awards finalist? What led you to from being the office manager, that the dream that you held, to now being the
Yeah,
Telstra Business Awards
yeah.
finalist?
An amazing mentor. To be honest, I would never ever have even thought to apply if she hadn't encouraged me. And because you can nominate anyone for those sorts of awards, so if you know some amazing people, it's always great to recognise them by nominating them for relevant awards. But yeah, she really, really talked me through the idea that everybody's got a story and everybody's got skills and abilities, and you're worthy to be able to put that out there. So I owe a lot to her for that.
This is incredible. People putting their faith in ourselves, that actually makes
Yeah,
us even believe more in ourselves. When you
yeah,
see that coming from people who are not connected with you in, in a way, that they're not your family, they're
yeah,
not your friends, but they are your well-wishers.
yeah,
That kind of confidence coming from the community that you're working in or your
yeah.
peers, that is such a beautiful message coming out for any person. And I think you deserve all this. So thank you so much, Jane, for
You're
being on my
welcome.
first step ever. Before we wrap up, I'd like you to share with our amazing listeners today who have been glued to us so far, that if you can share your top three learnings from your life so far, as a woman that you have grown into, what would
Yeah.
that be?
I think my number one would be to have a plan or set goals. And that doesn't mean that you have to have it all figured out. Sometimes a goal might literally be a really micro goal that tomorrow or next week, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to make that phone call, or I'm just going to research that other type of job. But have some sort of plan or goal is really, really important. I think number two is you have to think about who is surrounding you, because those people are your biggest influence. And I was lucky to have some people around me who were working at the next level and above of where I wanted to be, and they really helped lift my confidence and help lift me up and see that actually there's nothing magical about it. Anybody can keep moving and keep getting to those next roles. And the last one is really probably just work hard. I don't think there's any substitute for actually just putting your head down and working super hard. I think these days I work smarter than I used to in terms of working hard. But yeah, that would be the third thing.
I think my favorite takeaway from what you shared was the second point, where you said that when you are surrounded by the right people who can
Hmm.
uplift you, that's the greatest blessing that you have. And the magic doesn't really lie in
Yeah,
a particular position, or it actually lies in you and the kind of people that you're surrounded with,
yeah,
and
that's
a
right.
lot of belief in yourself. So thank you so much, Jane, for being on the first
You're
step
welcome.
ever.
Thanks so much, Ashani. It's been great.
It has been absolutely fun. And one last thing, I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a thought or a saying that they really resonate with.
Why not me? When you're thinking about, will I get that job? Could I work in that career? Will I get that promotion? It has to go to somebody. So why not me?
Absolutely love that. Why not me? If you ever plan to write a book, that would be an apt title. All right. Thank you so much, Jane, for being here. If you are interested to learn more about Jane or her career or profession or what's happening next, I will leave a link below. Feel free to connect with her or kind of,
Absolutely.
follow her journey. And to all my listeners out there, I know that these conversations really instill and spark somewhere, moves that needle in your mind, somewhere in the entire conversation, something that we have discussed or Jane has shared from her life has really helped you move forward. So do take that action, keep moving on, and as I always say, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. We'll see you next time. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.